Welcome to episode 21 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. On Stageworthy, I interview people who make theatre, actors, directors, playwrights, and more, and talk to them about everything from why they chose theatre to their work process and everything in between. You can find Stageworthy on Facebook and Twitter at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at stageworthypodcast.com. If you like what you hear, I hope you'll subscribe on iTunes or Google Music or whatever podcast app you use, and consider leaving a comment or rating. Christel Bartelse is an actor, comic writer, teacher, and solo show creator living in Toronto. In this episode, Christel mentions her performance of ONEymoon in May, which sadly has passed. However, her newest show, all kidding aside, will be presented at both the Toronto and Hamilton Fringe Festivals.
I think you're mostly known as a solo performer.
Yeah, I know. Which has pros and cons.
Of course it is. Of course it is. And I mean, do you find that when people see you for other stuff, they're like, "Oh, she's just a solo performer"?
Yeah, I think people associate me with being a solo performer. I actually love collaborating.
Yeah.
And I would love to do more of that. I think what I love about doing solo work is I'm in control.
Of course,
and
yeah.
I call the shots, and I make my own rehearsal schedule, and I book my own gigs, so I'm in control of everything. The downside is I sometimes, I used to be part of a sketch duo, so I do see people do improv or sketch troupes or being part of an ensemble, and I think I would love to do that.
Yeah.
I have had a few people say, "Oh, I thought of you for that, but I didn't think you would want to do it because you do solo work." So that does bother me. But at the end of the day, also I found that sometimes I have read another script or been considered for something, and then as I'm reading it, I think I don't want to say these lines, or I don't actually want to do this. I want to just do my own work. So I'm kind of trying to find the balance. I would love to have a mix of both. For sure. But it's just kind of what I fell into, and I'm very excited by solo work.
Yeah.
But as you may know, the downside is, you don't have anyone to kind of guide you, and as you come off stage after a great performance, you celebrate alone. If you have a really shitty performance, you
commiserate alone. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
one of the things that I'm kind of not looking forward to. This is my first solo performance, and every other show I've done, you come off stage and there's somebody else there to be like,
absolutely
great show, and you can say, great show. We're like, you could complain, the audience just wasn't with us. In solo performing, you're just kind of...
It's just you.
Just you.
Yeah. So that's the hard part. The great part about it is, it is my show. I have the freedom. I wrote it.
Yeah.
It's my words. I own it. If you mess up on stage, this is also a thing when you're working with other people. If you mess up, they kind of have your back.
Yeah.
So on a solo show, you don't have that, but you also have the freedom to, if you really fuck up, you can start riffing on your own and being like, I had it last year actually in Hamilton for the first time I can recall in 5 years. I blanked on stage, and this is a show I've been doing I blanked like you wouldn't believe, and it was probably 30 seconds, but it felt in my eyes like it felt like 10 minutes. And that was just a wake-up call for me in a really hard moment, because I realized, oh my God, like I don't have anyone that can save me or help me. And I worked around it, and in the end, apparently people didn't really notice, but I noticed.
Yeah. It's funny how much we rely on other performers when we're working with them.
Oh yeah.
And how much I don't even know how I would get out of it if I completely blanked.
Oh, it's hard. It's so hard. But I never call it a solo show anymore. I'm really trying to, because so many people have collaborate. Like you always have so many people collaborate. I mean, I have a director now. I have a stage manager.
Yeah.
On this particular show, I've had a lot of women I've chatted with, so I feel they're part of the show. I've had a couple people read the script who've given me some notes, so I never feel it's fully solo. I guess it's just people don't get seen behind the scenes, I guess. But
it's funny because I think that there is in some cases there's a little bit of a stigma about solo shows that maybe it's in the way that some people introduce them at fringes, that you hear. I know my guard goes up when I hear it's about my struggle with X, where I sort of start wondering, okay, so I'm going to pay you $10, and this is your therapy, and I don't really want to, like, there's a certain stigma about it. Do you have is there a certain way that you approach that when you're talking to people about your show? About how you...
No, I feel I totally agree with you, and I'm always a little bit, there is a part of me that goes, am I the biggest narcissist? Like, why should people come and pay to listen to my story? Yeah. So I guess I just think and I hope that I create work, although it comes from me, I hope and I set out that people can relate to it and still learn from it, and that they're feeling the same thing that I'm feeling or whatever, so they can, relate to that. But I think there's people that love the art form of the solo show. I'm one of those. I will go see any one-person show because I'm in that world. So I love it. Even in Toronto theater now, if I see there's a one-person show, I'm at it. And some I love, and some I think, yes, it's therapy. And I don't want to see therapy. I try not to create therapy. Yeah. I'm at least over the issues. I think that's important. And people that haven't, worked it out yet, then that's dangerous. But I know there's people that just hate one-person shows, and then maybe that's otherwise not my audience, or I could try and convince them to come, but I also accept if it's not their thing, it's not their thing, Yeah. And what I try to do is, there is also the stigma of the one-person show is someone just standing on stage alone with no props, no costumes, and that's fine. Yeah. And I've seen some incredible storytellers, and I'm fully with them, but I try and always make them a little bit theatrical as well. Yeah. And I hope that maybe helps engage the audience as well.
Yeah. What got you into performing as a solo artist?
Well, for some crazy reason, I do recall, like in my early 20s, I did want to do a one-person show. I was actually in a two-woman comedy duo called the Burnt Marshmallows, and we were together for many years, over 6 years, and we had a lot of success with that, and we actually got our start in Fringe in 2002 doing a show. And I think both my partner and I at the time, her and I both wanted to create a one-person show, but we didn't want to do that to the other person. Yeah. And then one day she decided to up and leave to Vancouver, and I thought, I was very hurt by that, and like surprised and upset, and like, oh no, my comedy partner's leaving. But at the same time, I was like, now is time to maybe write a show. So I actually took a complete year off, and I went traveling. I just popped off and just went, I just gotta go, as we do, I'm gonna go find myself, flaky for lack of better words. And when I came back, I just thought, it's just what I have to do. I didn't know where to start. I was fortunate that some people put me in touch with the right people. I got to chat with some people about where to start, and it just kind of started happening. And I thought, the first one was for sure the hardest. I almost lost my mind. It was so hard. I still say to this day, it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. I thought it was crazy. I lost sleep. I wasn't eating. It was so much pressure and stress. And I thought, I'm going to do one and that's it. But then I got the bug for it as well. Yeah. And then after doing one, I thought I have to create another. And I will say that it's always hard, but it does get a little bit easier. So this being my fourth one now, there's all the roller coaster ride with any creation of new work, but I'm trusting a little bit it's going to come together. Yeah. It has to. Somehow it's going to come together because the other three did. It will,
You were saying that even when you were in the comedy duo, you had the idea that you wanted to do a solo show. What was it that drew you to that? Do you know?
I'm trying to think back at the moment. I don't know what it is. I think I don't have a reason for that. I think other than I was just, in that case, I was always used to performing with somebody else on stage. So it's like now I always perform alone, and I'm hungry sometimes to do a collaboration with another artist. I think it was just being on stage with one other person the whole time. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have a moment or something. I guess there's some shows I was inspired by. One of my favorite one-woman shows is I, Claudia. Yeah. I saw that. I think that was for sure something that inspired me. Yeah. That was probably the most vivid memory of a one-person show I saw that I thought, wow, that's just incredible, and she's doing it all on her own. So probably some of that as well.
For me, it was reading Danny McIver's one-person shows. I'd never seen one until he
yeah.
did his farewell tour a few years ago when I finally saw House. But it was reading it that made me think, oh, you can actually do this. And like,
yeah.
it's not stand-up comedy. It's like, it's
Absolutely.
an actual play.
I also think Sandra Shamus is
Yeah.
a big influence for me as well. Yeah, I love her work, and I had seen her show, I think, at the Winter Garden. Yeah, she's someone else. So now that we're talking about it, I'm like, oh yes, that's what it was, for sure. Yeah.
What was that first show? First solo show?
So the first show, and I still, I still love that show, and that was, I guess, the closest to me. That show was CHAOTICA, so it was about a woman trapped in a board game. And just the reason why I love that show, although I don't tour it anymore because it was a nightmare to tour, and it's very sad when people still say to me, oh, that was your best show.
Oh.
But no, it was a very special show, and I think I was very lucky on the collaboration because I was working with Diana Kolpak, and I have a huge background in clown, and so does she, so we understood the language. Yeah. And that was just an experience I probably will never be able to have again. We just were fortunate enough. We were in a studio. We had a lot of time. I can't remember, but we had like a good solid like chunk of time. It wasn't a rush. It wasn't a crazy deadline. And we just spent so much time doing exploration. I never sat at the laptop and wrote it. It was all created through improv, which is the way I like to create. I find now I'm a little bit forced to sit at a laptop and type. But yeah, so that's what that show was. And I did it, I think I was 27, and I premiered it at the 2008 London Fringe. And that was the only festival I was doing. But I just had so much support behind me. I was very lucky. I was the most nervous I could ever imagine. And like I said, the creation of that almost killed me. But I know that show was I know it was really good. I put everything into that show. The downside of that show is I never had any idea about touring or, so I did not create that show with touring in mind. And it had a huge set. It has 1 million cues. It's a very complicated show. So the sad part about it is that's why I don't tour it often. And it was very personal, and I think I've kind of evolved from it. I have said I'm going to do like the 10-year anniversary show. I think one time I'd love to do that. So that's what that show was. And then I did that, I guess 2008. I did tour it 2009. Which I probably spent most of my money shipping the set in moving trucks around Fringe. It was crazy. I had no idea what I was doing.
So you had to did you rent? Have to rent it?
I shipped it to I think the Saskatoon Fringe. I had to rent a truck to get it to Edmonton. It was like everything that you should not do. I just didn't know. And
how can you know if it's your first time?
I had no idea. Yeah. I had no idea. Absolutely no idea what I was doing. But from that experience, I learned so much. And I also, I made no money. I lost money.
Of course.
I lost so much money. But yeah, that's how I got kind of really into the fringe bug of the touring, and that's how that came about. But
when you were touring that show, I mean, although a lot of your money was going into moving the stuff, the audience must have had enough success with it to make you think or decide that you want to keep doing it.
Oh, for sure. Yes. Yeah, definitely. I think I felt I'd conquered something so huge, and I don't think I give myself enough credit, and I think a lot of us as solo artists, we don't. As I was saying, I just read my script today for the first time, and I've had some crying moments over it, but today I wrote 40 pages. I have a show. Yeah. So I'm starting to be more gracious with that. And yes, if audiences are responding, that show did very well. Yeah. My favorite story is at the Edmonton Fringe with CHAOTICA. Again, I had no idea what I was doing. I was at the Catalyst Theatre, and I remember walking to my venue, and there's a lineup going all the way around the venue. And I walked in and I said to the tech, do you have any idea what's going on outside? What are they lining up for? And she just looked at me and she said, for you. That's for you. Yeah. And that, I'll never forget that moment. And it was a little bit oh my God, I wanted to freak out. It's it's what we want, and then it happens, and you're like, I don't want this, right?
Yeah, exactly. So from CHAOTICA, the second show was
ONEymoon.
ONEymoon?
Yeah, okay. And I also, just as a side note, I do create from what's going on in my life.
Right,
So CHAOTICA was about feeling very lost. I was like approaching 30s, the chaos of my life. That's where that came from. ONEymoon was, I didn't know whether I wanted to be in a relationship or not. I didn't really know what I was doing. And then I had kind of met someone and I thought, yeah, I don't know where this relationship is going. And, you know, I was just, you start thinking about, is this it or is this not it? Definitely was not it. But that show came about, just sort of, again, it involved, I was packing to go on a little holiday by myself, and it looked like I was packing for a honeymoon for one, so that's where that idea came from. And then I went to the beach, and it kind of started writing itself. Significant Me was the sequel to ONEymoon, and that show came about, I actually started working on that show with someone, and I had just started dating my husband, who's now my husband, which is crazy, and he had just moved in, and I remember thinking, oh my God, am I some domestic housewife now? It felt very strange. But the person I was working on the show with at the time, I said, I want to do a show about a crazy housewife who kills her husband. You know, which when I said this to the new guy I was dating was like, oh my God, get me out of this relationship. But when we started creating it, she said, it's just a continuation of ONEymoon. It's the same character. So I never set out to do a sequel.
Right.
And we can talk about that because the sequel is a whole nother thing. Again, pros and cons. And then this show is called All Kidding Aside. And this is a show about my conflict of wanting to have a baby or not.
Okay.
And being a woman who kind of needs to make the decision, but terrified and all the reasons why I don't, but maybe deep down there's some part of me that does.
So moving from that first show to this new show, how has the process changed in terms of how you create the show? It's background music. If you want to cut the window, we can do that.
How's the process changed? Well, like I said, I think I prefer to create in a studio and improvise. I think, again, as solo artists, especially those of us who do Fringe, we don't have the time, we don't have the budget. So I just got very lucky with that first one. So that's what I mean. And Diana was great to have on board, and she had the time, and she wanted to do it out of the goodness of her own heart. So we just had a very special thing. I think ONEymoon, like now I've started to just have to write them more. I get the idea and I start writing. I don't really consider myself a writer, although I have written 4 shows, but definitely I always start with a deadline. That is I always set out, I apply to something, I get the date, and then, so that's how I definitely start my work, the deadline. But I'd say it's more writing. It's a little bit more writing, then going, exploring. Sounds like with you as well, you've written your script, now you're learning it, and then you'll go into rehearsal. I prefer to still do a lot on its feet, but yeah, it's just, I've never, like I said, I keep saying it, I've never had that first experience again.
For me, I consider myself more of a writer.
Okay.
So, working with Keystone Theatre, that's a complete departure the way that we work with there, but for me, I like to write and know what I'm going to say, and then I like to do it. But this is the first time that I've written anything that just has like one voice, so it's a very new thing.
And is it you? Is it actually you, or is it a character?
It's a character.
Yeah. Okay.
There's elements of me in
Yes.
it, but it's not something that I ever was like, this is me telling the story of my life. It's completely fictionalized, and the elements that I've drawn out are just to. Really, they were. Initially, I wasn't going to put anything of myself in it.
Okay.
And I was like, no, these are the things that I need for me to make the emotional connection.
Yeah.
Put those in.
Okay.
That sort of thing.
I think I always. You might be the same, but I always collaborate. By that I mean, I always find a director. So that's something else I can talk about. Every show I've done, I find a different director, and I do that. Although everyone I've worked with has been awesome for that show and for that time, I just do that because I find it very exciting and interesting to work with somebody new every time. And it really shakes it up and changes it up. So I never work with the same director, but I have my mentors and my go-to people that I work along the way of, can you listen to this? Or can we just go into a studio one day and play? So, and with this show now, my director was away for a very long time when I needed her. Desperately, so I went to another collaborator, Andy Massingham, who's a great physical theater performer, which is my background, and he said, let's just go into a studio and play. And that's again what I love doing, because it got me away from just writing it, and I learned a lot from that day of just getting it up on its feet.
And working with your collaborators in all the things that you've done, would you consider going back to work on a new show with somebody that you worked with before, or do you prefer just to always go with the new?
Oh, I for sure would. I mean, everyone that I've worked with, I think, are awesome people, and oh, definitely. I think, yeah, it's also just a different time, or they get busy as well. Yeah, so that's the hard part, but I've all had positive experiences, so for sure. I think it's funny because I worked with a very close friend last summer before I went to Edinburgh, my friend Paul, and he kind of came in just to help me with the show, and because he's also a great friend, we had so much fun. So as much as I love my director now, I'm just saying I miss like little parts of him for sure. And Michelle, who I'm working with, I'm so fortunate I found her. I didn't know her before. I went to her on a recommendation. So that's been pretty awesome. We're getting to know each other, but we didn't know each other at all before.
Which show did you take to Edinburgh?
ONEymoon. Yeah.
How was your Edinburgh experience? Because of all the festivals that I can think of, I mean, I can think of all the Canadian ones, and Edmonton still freaks me out. And
it should freak anyone out.
Yeah, Winnipeg feels a little more comfortable to me for some reason, but Edmonton scares the crap out of me. Edinburgh. Oh, that one makes me want to pee myself.
Okay, well, I have to. So going back, I'll say my favorite festival in the whole world is still the Edmonton Fringe Festival, and I think that came from that was a big major festival. I took CHAOTICA there. I just got so lucky. But there's something I just love about that festival. And I actually haven't been back in many years, and it's killing me. Yeah. And I didn't get in this year. I got offered to do a BYOV. It was going to cost me way too much money, so I'm not. Now, having done Edinburgh, I'm not to take away from Edmonton and Winnipeg at all, but I will laugh if I return back to Edmonton or Winnipeg. I would just laugh and go, this festival is so small, you know. So that definitely that was the positive. Yeah. I mean, Edinburgh is the mother of all festivals. The mother of all
fringes. Yeah.
I again just got fortunate. I think I did it very smart. I did what was called the Free Festival, the PBH Free Fringe. So for my first time going, I wanted to go as a tourist who got to be in Edinburgh for a month, who got to do my show, and who got to see as much theater as possible. Yeah. Those were the reasons I went. I didn't care as much as though I should have, or I didn't care about landing a world tour. I didn't care about the producer seeing me as the next big thing. I just didn't think that was going to happen. No one knew who I was. So I went on the smallest investment possible. I had to pay for airfare and a place to live, which was all very expensive, but I didn't pay for a venue. Right. So through the Free Fringe, they give you a venue. It's not going to be great. Again, when I first saw my venue, I almost cried. But then I have to say it grew on me. It was a nightclub, and then I have to say they put up some curtains and a backdrop, and by the end, I loved it, and it worked out, and I wouldn't want it any other way. And my last show, I was like crying. I didn't want to leave, and and then it was like busking. So every night people put money in your hat. So that was the experience I had. So I didn't sell tickets.
So it's literally a free fringe.
It's a free fringe, and no one, but you learn about a spiel at the end. I learned so much about that, about exactly how to, give this talk at the end of the show to get the most bang for your buck and to get the most money. Right. And that was really fun to me, is every night trying something different and going, oh, wow, tonight I made way more money than last night. The biggest fear in Edinburgh was because you don't sell tickets, you have no idea who is coming. You have no idea when the door opens and when there's, 3,000 shows. Yeah. Or you don't know if anyone is going to be at your show. And I just have that problem all the time. But I have to say, considering I was told I would have audiences of 2 and then that would be a good night. And my smallest was 10 ever. And on average, I was playing to like 50 people.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. I felt it was really good. But, should I go back, I would find a way, I guess, I don't know where I'd get this money from, but to really invest and to get a publicist and to get into one of the main venues and to do all the, bells and whistles. But at the same time, it's such a huge investment. I don't have $20,000 to invest in that, and so
What's the biggest lesson that you learned from Edinburgh?
I can tell you that. I would say I feel that I can now, that show in particular, but I find, and with anything, having done ONEymoon, I feel I could do that show now anywhere, and I could make it work. If I showed up somewhere and they said, here's your garage and we have no lights and no sound, I could pop up that show. I just feel it gave me so much adaptability. Endurance, you had to go on every night. Every night. Here we're used to at Fringe 7 shows. There it was 22 shows. Pursuing performance through complete exhaustion. And it's just a lot of confidence. I mean, I did it, and I also set out to do it, and I did it, and I lived to tell the tale. So, and I always say this about Edinburgh, regardless of what is going on, because there are some very hard days, it is the most beautiful city. I fell in love with that city. So on your worst day possible, I would just stop and give myself a shake and be like, look at the castle right there. Like, look where you are. Look what, so... and I would recommend it to anyone to either go and see it or just to be in it and, you'll learn.
Did you get to be the tourist that you wanted to
Oh,
be
for sure. Not so much during.
But
I took a few days at the end and I did everything I wanted to do and I saw so much, and that's the other thing. In Edinburgh, the show that you pay £30 for ends up not being really great, and some of the best work I saw was 2:00 in a pub. I walked by and someone begged me to come watch them, and I did, and I went, this performer is incredible, and why aren't they playing to 200 people? So that's really cool about it as well.
Just to go back a little even further, than why did you get into solo performing? What was it that drew you into the theater?
Great. Well, I grew up my whole life in dance. I was put in dance. So I was in all that competitive jazz, tap, ballet, so I really...
Did you enjoy dance?
Oh, I loved it.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's still part of my work now. Like, it made me a physical performer, which is my favorite thing. No, I love dance. I just, deep down, I love being on stage, even then. So I always had that. I was a shy kid, but I loved performing. I was the kid that always made up little plays at the dinner table and did a lot of that stuff. So I think I just didn't have time for it because I was so committed in this dance world. So I think, I took drama in high school, all of that. So I loved getting up. And I guess after high school, then I had to sort of make a choice, and I decided to, as much as I love dance, I knew I wasn't going to be a professional dancer. I just knew that. I just didn't have, especially a ballerina, it's just, it takes a whole nother set of chops. So I just went to theater school, and then it was at theater school that, again, I always thought I'd be a dramatic actress. Like, I had plans of, I would love to do Stratford Festival, and then I got into improv when an improv teacher from Second City come to teach us improv at theater school, and just fell in love with it. I loved doing comedy and thinking on my feet, creating characters. And then that's where I met my comedy partner, and so it just took a different journey than I ever thought. And even, I never thought I'd be doing solo shows. It's just kind of weird how, a door opens and you go through that door. And
What was the theater school that you went to?
So I went. I moved from Kitchener-Waterloo area when I was 19. I moved to Toronto. I did 1 year at George Brown. They had a program called IPAC, which is Introduction to Performing Arts, which oddly enough, I just got to go speak at George Brown last week with the same artistic director who brought me in to talk to all of the students about solo creation. So that was pretty cool. And then I went to Randolph. So I went to Randolph, and I think that came from the dance as well. So the story at Randolph is I was a dancer and an actor, and I cannot sing. And at Randolph, at that time, I think it's changed, but they really valued good singers. So it actually didn't matter if you could dance or act. If you were a great singer, they would just sing your praises. And so that happened as well. And then on top of it, as I said, I got really into improv. I went to Second City. I did the conservatory. And I continued to take every class at Equity Showcase. Then I took a clown workshop with Sue Morrison, which was a weekend intro thing that I just thought, I'll try this. And then I got bit by that bug.
Of course, yeah.
And then fell in love with clown and then made that, something that I pursued. So, yeah, just...
I always shake my head about clown just because, not because I think it's bad. I think we live in a society that doesn't value clowning.
Not at all.
And in fact, the popular thing is, clowns, they freak me out. And it's just this ridiculous thing where I think that people think of the clown as they think creepy circus.
Oh, absolutely. I teach it now, and that's the first thing my students say. And I also, I'm dying to actually create a full clown show. Like wearing the red nose, I've never done that, even though my passion is clown. And I think my reason behind it is I cannot put a poster up with me wearing a red nose. I just don't, I think that's very tricky to market. Unless you've already got a name like Morrow and Jasp, who've done great things, and I think they have a following, and that's awesome. So, they've built that. But again, if you didn't know them and you knew nothing about clown, you wouldn't understand what that is. So
it's also, you've also got somebody like Rebecca Northern.
Oh yeah,
who's like,
that's another one of my favorite shows.
And she's got like this great show that she does, and her show I think stands out because she doesn't look like, she's not creepy clown.
Right.
She's sexy clown.
Yeah.
On her poster, which I think takes a little bit off that, but people have this real stigma.
I know it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible, but that bugs me about clown. When I always say to people, my solo work is always rooted in clown. Like, I'm always my clown in my shows.
Yeah.
Now, I know that. I don't know if that I don't expect that to come across the audience. I know that. So, funny enough, the show now, my director just the other day, like, she thought, would you want to do this in clown? Like, just a suggestion. And I thought, why didn't I even think of that? I'm not going to do that, but I also, what I always do is at least once I get into clown and I wear the red nose and I run through my show. Because I just think I can get so much out of it, Again, this show's a little bit different style. I think this show's way more me and more vulnerable and more honest. So that's why it's scary. But I think it's very hard to market clown. It's it's very unfortunate and it's sad. But Helen Donnelly has done some amazing stuff. I think she's very fortunate at Toronto Festival of Clowns. Of course, everyone wants to go and see it there.
Right.
It's part of a clown festival, but. I've talked a little bit about her as well. It's like she said, I don't know how to market my shows. She struggled with that a little bit as well.
Well, that is the trick. Is that if you how do you sell clown?
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is because people see that red nose and they sort of decide that they don't want to see it.
Yeah. It's very unfortunate because there's
so much good work.
There's so much good work. Yeah. The other option is just to do a clown show and not
have the red nose.
But
which is sort of what Keystone does. The
white
face becomes the red nose, but it's still we don't have that stigma because people see the white face. They're more likely to think mime than they are to think red.
But you probably had some trouble marketing that at times as well.
Sometimes,
right?
Because people, for Keystone, people see the white face and they think it's just mime. Oh, I don't like mime. Yeah. Which is a completely different thing than I don't like clown.
I know, but I think people just need to watch saying they don't like something before,
course,
It's like even, there are a lot of people that walk around going, I don't like solo shows, no thank you. And I just think, well, maybe give it a chance. But unfortunately, and especially at Fringe, this is what's dangerous. If someone's never gone to a Fringe show before, and what's supposed to be so amazing about Fringe is that you take risks and you walk into a show and you pay $10, that's it. But if you walk into, your first clown show and it's bad, or you walk into your first solo show and it's awful, that's going to deter you from the rest of your life. So that's what's unfortunate also, but I would never close the door on anything, I mean, sci-fi isn't really my thing, but when there was a show getting a lot of buzz in Edinburgh, and I thought, okay, it's and I went and saw it, and it wasn't my thing. By that, it wasn't my topic, but these two guys were fantastic, and they had a great show. I can still appreciate two amazing performers in the show that they've created. But
So all kidding aside, you talked about how it's different from what you've done before. You're talking. It sounds like your previous shows, although they came from you, they were more. There was more artifice or something?
They were rooted in a character. I called myself a character.
Yeah.
I think a lot came from, it was like an exaggerated version of myself, almost a clown, I would say. It was like the clown version of me. So this show, I haven't named my character, let's say, not that anyone can see me. I'm doing quotations. It's way more, it is me. It's more Christel. By that I mean, I feel it's Christel on stage telling her story. And I think, for example, ONEymoon, I didn't marry myself. It was the character who decided, but it came from my fears around marriage. Yeah. So that's the difference. But this show is really me just telling it. I think we're still playing a little bit because in previous kind of read-throughs of chunks of the script, I felt almost uncomfortable sharing a lot of it. It is very scary and vulnerable. And we talked about, well, what if I went back to playing a character? What if would that help me that I call myself Sandy? Would that, so I'm still playing with that a little bit, but I think it doesn't matter. I think people that know me, really know me, might come to the show and just see me as, oh, this is Christel's show telling her story. But I think if you don't know me, you don't really know if it's me or a character. So it doesn't matter. I think it's more my own fears of revealing things about myself. If that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. Yeah. It makes total sense. I mean, there's something about, and the difficulty with being a solo performer in that way, I think, is the idea of revealing too much about yourself to a room full of people who don't know you. Like, in some ways, you're telling a room full of people you don't know things that you wouldn't be comfortable telling your best friends sometimes.
That's so true. And I know, and it's so crazy. And then for some reason, I'm actually very comfortable on stage telling them. It's the before, and it's during the creation and the writing that I'm in my head freaking out. But no, that's a great point. I know. And I think also the danger is people, regardless, after they see your show, they think they know everything about you.
Of course.
And so that's the other danger. It's like, no, I didn't really mean that. Or, okay, I exaggerated that part. I don't really think that. It was just, that made it more, made more sense for the dramaturgy of the show or whatever. But, what are we supposed to do about that?
It's funny because when you're, there's something I think about the solo performance where people, more than if they see an ensemble show, most people who see an ensemble show don't think that the people that they're seeing are the characters,
Yes.
But in a solo show, because it's just you, I think there's more of that idea that, oh, this is like all completely autobiographical or something like that.
Yeah, I know that's always the case. Although I've also seen some solo shows where I guess I now have my head, of course, that are all autobiographical, like we sort of have that idea in our head. So I remember seeing a show once, where I saw a whole show about someone disclosing that they were gay, and this whole story. And then at the end I thought, and I kind of knew him, and I thought after, oh wow, it was so brave and powerful, and I had no idea he was gay. And then I talked to him, and he's like, oh no, none of it's true. It's just a made up story. And then there was a whole other part of me that felt a little bit like let down, or what? I was confused, Well,
because you felt like he'd revealed something to you, and then maybe because you've seen that, now you're feeling a little bit closer to him, and then to find out that it's completely made up.
Yeah, it was weird. And there was another show like that. Oh my god, I feeling a little hesitant because people are going to recognize these shows, but I do remember there's another show, a one-man show, very well done. Very powerful story, and I think all of us touring artists, we all bought into it, even though we had been touring with this person for years. And then we learned after, like, it was a made-up story. But I think because we knew him, and there was like some parts of his life, we totally bought into it. So I don't know what the answer is, but there's a little bit like, what? I don't know, But
I think that I kind of feel like, and maybe this comes from the work with Keystone, where since we don't have words, we just have to accept that the audience gets from the show what they get from the show.
Yes.
That you have to just accept. I think you have to. As somebody who hasn't performed my show yet, but I think that the audience gets from it what they get from it, and you have to just accept that that's what they're taking from it.
Absolutely, and everyone's going to take something different. Although I think I try and set out and have a message in my head, like what am I trying to say? But yeah, everyone's going to take something different from it, and as we know, there's going to be people, it's going to resonate, they're going to like it, and not everyone's going to like your show. And with this show too, I think, my intention is not to offend anyone. I'm really disclosing a lot about the reasons why, a big part of me why I might not want to have children, but I'm not setting out to offend anyone. No. It's my story. But if you take offense because I say that I don't like toddlers running around screaming, if you take offense, like,
not many people do enjoy toddlers running around screaming.
Right, so, I know. But someone's going to find...
Look, if somebody can be offended by something, they are probably going to be. Yeah. We live in a society where people are just offended by things.
I know. So we can't
control that about everybody.
Yeah, I don't know if because I don't know your show either. I don't know if you've experienced this, but I have a terrible habit of doing this, and I'm trying not to, of trying to almost project what I think the audience is going to take away from it, or this is what I want the audience to walk away from, and I'm trying not to do that because that's quite dangerous, And like you said, everyone's going to take something different from it. So
for me, in writing this show, I've been conscious about what I'm putting out there, but I don't want them to take away from it. But I don't want to try to control what I think they're going to take from it.
Okay.
And I think I just want to perform the show. And whatever they take from it, they'll take from it.
I think that's, at the end of the day, that's all we can. We want to. You have to think about, why do we want to do this? I have so many reasons why I want to do the show that it feels like the timing is now. I got to do it, and I'm excited by it. And at the end, that's what we got to do. And,
are you finding any obviously these are big questions that you're asking yourself in the show. Are you controlling where you think you want the show to go? Or are you still in a really organic space for that? Not to give your ending.
I know, because there's I think there's some good twists in the show for sure. I'm just being a bit hesitant because I don't want. No, it's good. I just don't want to give too much away. But I think it's. Well, the show originally, I'll just say, for a long time was called On the Fence. That was the working title for a very long time. And then I just realized that was just hitting it over the head too much. It was like, that just says everything was. I like, all kidding aside, it's a bit of a wordplay, I don't know. So the conflict is whether I have a baby or not. So I think that is the conflict. That's what the show is about. And it's all the reasons why and all the reasons not to or that I should. And so what's interesting about, again, this show is, there isn't really an answer yet because I still don't know.
Right.
So that's kind of in the exploration as well.
But that's an ending in itself.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yeah. So I think that's what I'm discovering. I mean, I'm still playing a little bit with the climax or the conflict, but the conflict is throughout the whole show. I guess my challenge with this show, I'll just talk about this for a moment, is, and maybe you've thought about this for your own show, you have to start to think about your market or who your target audience is. And I just know with my shows, I never set out to do this, but my show always resonates more with women. I've had a lot of men that have enjoyed it, for sure, but definitely it's a lot of women. And then for a long time, I was worried about that, or like, I should create more of a universal show. Why do I keep creating these shows for women? Well, then I thought, who buys the tickets to the theater usually? Women. They often drag along their man with them, so it's often women. And if I can fill seats with women, that's okay. That's okay, right? Because I remember seeing women fully clothed. And I remember I saw them many years ago, and the whole audience was like 50-50, half men, half women. And then I started seeing them more and more. It was just filled with women, but they always packed the house. So they were always sold out, and I thought, it doesn't matter if it's sold out with a man or it's sold out with women.
It doesn't. And you know what? I don't think we need more audiences filled with men watching plays by men. If your play speaks to women, then absolutely embrace that.
But so I'm just kind of figuring that out. I think you're probably at the stage too. I'm just learning how to, I'm trying to figure this out. How to market again the solo show and get people interested in it and why they need to listen to my story. But also kind of, I'm still shaping what is this show about, and why should people come and see it? When you're in early stages of your show, you don't know yet.
I still don't. And of course, the festivals are always like, tell us who your target audience is, and that's when I'm like, I have to choose a target. Like, I don't know, people who like stuff.
Yeah,
like,
I know that's so. I know
the marketing stuff. So.
That I know. I just had to do, and I think for Toronto already, like I had to send my image. So I luckily organized this photo shoot way back when, just knowing that it was gonna TikTok so I had a great photo shoot, and Kurt Furlaw, who's been amazing, is like working on my image. But I find that the worst part, they're asking you for the stuff in February, and I'm like, I remember my title. I just said I think I asked for an extension. I'm like, look, I really just don't know what my title is, and I can't decide by 5 p.m. tonight. Like, this is a big deal. This is flashed across every poster. It's in every. This is what I have to call my show for the next long time.
Well, you can't really once you've done this show, you can't really rename it.
I know. I thought that too. I know, it's weird, right? So I had to make sure it was something that fit, but that's always scary.
So you're doing Toronto and Hamilton? Are you doing any other?
No.
fringes?
So this is the first year in, oh my God, since like 2009 that I'm not on a longer tour. And of course last year I was away all August. So, I'm definitely, I wish I was doing one more like Edmonton or whatever, but at the same time I'm really looking forward to the summer of being around in August. It's the first time I'm around. I'm lucky with some ONEymoon gigs, ironically, in August. And they've asked for a 90-minute version of the show. So the cool thing is I get to kind of, rework that show again because it's at 60 minutes. But I've got a lot of excess material.
Do you, the idea of extending it, is that fun to you? Or have you done
it's really
60
fun.
minutes for... it's scary
No, the only reason it's fun is because I have ONEymoon, I have Significant Me, and already what I did for Edinburgh is I mashed the two shows together. I wanted to have the best arc possible.
Okay.
So the downside of that is I think I would have had way more bookings because I could have done ONEymoon and then I could have said, and I have the sequel.
Of course.
But now I've been doing this version for so long that it's just the version that it is. It's the 60 minutes, you get two shows for the price of one, let's say. So the good thing is I have a lot of material because I technically have a 2-hour show. So I'm not worried about material. I don't think I have to rewrite anything. It's just finding, again, the arc. And they want an intermission. So I've never had...
Okay.
So
that's even worse.
Yeah.
When you build something for Fringe, you're doing it
I know.
Go straight through and there's
I think I'm not thinking about it. I can't even start to think about it until I've opened this show.
Of course, yeah.
So, but yeah, I think, we're going to put a ton of work into this.
Yeah.
I open at Toronto. That's going to be the most nerve-wracking. It's going to be scary.
Yeah.
And then I get to do Hamilton. And then I just think after that, I get to just breathe for a bit and let it just sit and reevaluate the show. And, so I think maybe it'll be nice to be around in the summer and see what else happens and just to be around with family and friends and just kind of explore Toronto in August. I think that'll be okay. And I still get to do 2 festivals and stick around.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Are you commuting to Hamilton, or are you just gonna stay there?
Well, what I do is are you commuting or?
I'm staying.
Yeah, I am. My parents live about 25 minutes outside of Hamilton. And so it's been kind of fun the last few times I've done Hamilton. I actually have a great time staying there.
Yeah.
They live in the country, and it's like there's a pool, and it's just really nice property. So it's kind of like, a working vacation. Yeah. So I often stay there, but I think I know a few people in Hamilton that they've always offered, if you want to stay overnight tonight and hang out with everyone. Yeah. But I don't really commute to Toronto. I think that's too much.
I kind of thought that if I'm going to do a Fringe, even if it's in commuting distance, I should do that Fringe and commit to not just helicoptering in for my show and then helicoptering out. I should just be there for the whole thing.
Yeah. I found it a little last year I went with a purpose. It was my preview to Edinburgh. I had 11 shows there. So that was my mission. I just was going and doing the show and then constantly reworking it. So I didn't care so much about the hangout. That wasn't my, which is very rare for me. But no, I think I'll be around. I think, I agree with you. It's nice to kind of be part of that community. And I always so enjoy going to see other people's work and everything. So, and Toronto, just my rule of thumb is, unfortunately, I will not be seeing anything until I have a few under my own, under my belt. Until
you can't if your show is new and you're still getting it under the belt, you can't put other people's stuff in your brain.
No, and and then I'm just a terrible audience member. I'm watching their show, having a freak out, or running my own line.
Yeah.
So, but and again with ONEymoon, I've just, because I can do that show in my sleep. You know, I love when I roll to a festival and I'm like, I can go see a show right before mine. Like I'm at that point with that show. Yeah. You know, not right before, but like, oh yeah, I can go see that, and then I've got an hour between mine. But with a new show, there's no way. So I'm hoping. I don't know. I get a little bit more comfortable, but Hamilton for sure. I think I'll hopefully have some time and feel comfortable to see stuff. And Hamilton's smaller, so you can, see stuff. I still find Toronto overwhelming. There's so many shows, and then as you have the same problem, you have about 100 people you know.
Well, Toronto is how do you see? Everybody's got a show. How do you see all the shows for all your friends and still see other stuff?
Oh, it's crazy.
It's just too much.
And I have fringe guilt all the time. I suffer from extreme fringe guilt.
I think we all do. Oh,
it's just, and then, it's like, I think I'm trying to get better with that because I never take offense if someone can't see my show. I get it, but it's still, I always talk about the last night at the Fringe tent, the closing night party.
Where you're like, oh, I'm sorry I didn't get to see your show.
I know, and it's like, how is this party fun? All we're doing is apologizing to each other.
Course.
It's not.
I think we have to accept the fact that we're all trying to get people to see our show. And that's a business.
Yeah,
you have to. It's nice to see a few shows, but we can't see everybody's show, especially if we're in the Fringe.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah.
Although at the same time, like I said, I almost last year, I think, even though I wasn't in it, I just still couldn't. I was going to see as much as possible in the time that I had, and I still. There's one or two you don't see, and it just kills you, and you feel like, oh my God, they're never going to talk to me again. It's just ridiculous. Yeah. But I think someone who's in it and really understands, they would never hold that against you.
No, they could never hold that against you. Where can we find you online?
Great question. No, I just have my website, which I have to admit I need to update. I think I've been so busy writing my show. I'm not the most tech savvy with my website, but just christelbartelse.com. Yes, so as I said, I'm doing the Toronto Fringe, Tarragon Extra Space, and then I'm doing the Hamilton, the Staircase Theatre. And as another just little plug, I'm doing ONEymoon one night in Toronto, Friday, May 13th, 9:30 at the John Candy Box Theatre. Because I haven't done that show in Toronto in years and years and years. I just wanted to do it once. I also just want people to see it, the show that I have done for a long time, before they see the new one that I have no idea what it's going to be. Do you think that you're kind of like in your mind, you're sort of like padding, like, see, this one's good, I don't know about this one yet? I think we do that, but I'm feeling confident. I think as we talked about, I just think people need to understand, it is a new work. And I'm not saying that to make excuses. It's just a new work. It took, ONEymoon took 5 years. I still continue to rewrite it. Like it's a never ending work. So that's just the kind of artist I am. So with this show, I'm super excited to do it. I'm feeling ready to do it. Not ready right now, but I will be ready. But I think people just have to understand that. But and then it is what it is, and it's going to keep evolving and changing. And at the end of the day, there's so many great artists, but there's also so many people that wouldn't dare to do a one-person show. So we also have to give ourselves a pat on the back that we're doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Christel, thank you so much
for
talking
thank
to me
you.
today.